My name is Jamie Goodfriend. I'm the Global CMO of Wonderman. I have a lot of my colleagues here. Thank you for the support. A lot of men here today. Big shout out for the men. I love it. So I am very fortunate to be able to introduce this incredible powerhouse panel. To my left immediately is my friend and client, Kirsten Ward. Kirsten is the general manager at Microsoft of the Windows and Devices group. So that means that Kirsten's team, she oversees the digital marketing globally and talks to, about 100 million people, give or take a few million. That's a very large group of people. Kirsten is a mom, and we're going to hear a lot more about her in a moment. To Kirsten's left is Kate Gutkowski. And Kate is, I'm going to go to the next page. She's the vice president at GE of commercial sales and something called Digital Thread, which we're going to learn about. Kate is responsible for the digital transformation of GE's 25,000 sales professionals. No easy task. That is no easy task. And then to her left is a Girls Lounge favorite, Nola Weinstein, back for more. I got a little applause there, a little shout out for Nola. Damn. So Nola's current title is she's Global Head of Culture, Engagement, and Experiential Marketing at Twitter. And she was previously head of executive engagement, where she built the Twitter partner experience and program for executives. So we're going to get started. So I asked all of these guys, they were very brave to come today. I asked them for some fun facts. So I'm not going to tell you which one is the fun fact. So we're going to try to figure out whose fun fact is from who. Okay. One of these women on the panel, her client told her she needed to go to Dale Carnegie. Exactly, I heard an oh God. Except she liked it so much she became a Dale Carnegie instructor.
Right there.
Okay. You think it's Kirsten? Yeah. Okay, all right. Well, we'll get back to that one. We're going to see if you're right. One of them had a little control issue last summer and drove a taxi from the Berkshires to New York City because she did not trust the driver. Okay, I don't know. We're going to have to figure out who this is. All right. Yes. And then the other one, this is a good one. Her high school prom photo appeared on the Kelly Ripa show because she went to the prom with Joel McHale and did not know that her photo was going to be shown on the Kelly Ripa show. And we all know how good those photos look. Okay, so we had one vote. You said Dale Carnegie, okay?
And she drove through and she went to the prom. I went to the prom?
Okay, so actually, this is the Joel McHale prom date. Yes? And I think we could all Google that photo. That's probably visible, and we're gonna have to look at that. That's pretty good. Kate is the Dale Carnegie instructor, which I find just fascinating. That's the whole other story.
It's really bad when your customer tells you, your boss, that you need to go to Dale Carnegie. It's not really.
And our control freak down at the end drove the taxi from the Berkshires to New York.
He was falling asleep at the wheel. It wasn't good.
And it wasn't an Uber.
No, and he asked me to stop to buy him cigarettes. That was the best part.
And you did it.
And I did. And
Okay.
I paid him anyway. Wow.
That's guilt. That's such a chick thing, right? It's such guilt. Or a Jewish mother thing. I'm not sure, right? Okay. So before we get started into the meat of this, into some of the business stuff, I always like to ask this question of women who've achieved a lot of success. So we're going to be talking about the future today, but I want to kind of go to the past to begin with. So let's start with Kirsten. First job, what'd you do, and how long did it take you to move out of your family home to be independent?
Okay, let's see. So my first job, I went straight from college into management consulting, which is kind of laughable because, I had no working knowledge of anything. But I started Monday after I graduated, which I would not advise. Take a little break. But I moved out effectively, the day I graduated. My parents actually graduation weekend turned my childhood bedroom into our guest room.
Amen. That's a good idea. I think many of us should do that for our kids. It's a great idea. Kate?
So I thought it was first job ever. So first job ever was working as a waitress on a boat on the Peoria River. And it was a Jamaican kind of eclectic kind of restaurant. And and so that was my first, I thought it was first job ever.
It counts.
Whatever.
Okay. And then
There's no police here. It's okay.
Right, and then I went to University of Illinois in Champaign, and never left. Like the day I left for college, I never went back to my parents' house. GE hired me right out of college and started on the technical leadership program.
That's 2 for 2 moving right out. I see a trend. Okay, Nola.
My first job ever was actually working the doll aisle in my grandfather's toy store in Brooklyn. And I always say everything I learned about marketing to women, I learned in the Barbie aisle on Christmas Eve. Because you would actually see customers of every background walk in, and they wanted to see both who they were, a reflection of that, and who they wanted their child to be. And there was power in veterinary Barbie and NASA Barbie and Barbies of every background. And seeing that representation really shaped, I think, my own storytelling and the career path I pushed forward.
Anybody from Mattel in the room? That's a great story.
Oh, really?
Really? That's fantastic. I did not know that. That's so fantastic. Serendipity here at the girls' lounge. Okay, so tell me something, because we're going to talk a little bit about business, but can you guys, whatever order, tell us a little bit about something that you're currently passionate about personally, not as a representative of your company, but personally. Nola, why don't you kick it off, go opposite.
I think one of the things I'm deeply passionate about is promoting and encouraging women in STEM. Right now, right after this, we at Twitter are actually doing an event called Here We Are to celebrate women in tech. And the thing you hear when you say to someone, why aren't there more, where is everyone, is, oh, there are no people, there is no pipeline. It's a pipeline problem, it's not our problem. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to really shift who we give a stage to, whose voice we raise. And one of the things I've been working on at Twitter from the beginning is getting more female business leaders to start actually sharing thought leadership and putting themselves out there without hesitation or fear of consequence. And that's something I'm deeply focused on, both through work and on the side.
And just a little shout out to the Girls Lounge. I would say this is one of the original stages for women that Shelley took the stage and did this early. So big kudos to this room.
Good. One of the things I'm really passionate about is I'm really active. GE, we've got a GE Women's Network, and I've been with the company for 20 years. And one of the things that when I was kind of coming up in the company very, very early on was I knew very early on that I wanted to be a wife, a mother, and I wanted to have a great career. And I was looking for role models in GE at that time that had that. And I looked around and I didn't see them. A lot of the women, talked about how they never saw their kids, their nannies were raising them, their husbands were staying at home, and that just wasn't my situation. So one of the things I did was I tried to do something about it. So I created a program called If You Can See It, You Can Be It. And what it's all about is it's a 3-day professional development training course that we put on, and we do it for our employees, but we also do it for our customers. And what we do is the goal of it is to really, we believe that the best leaders are the best storytellers. And so we believe, one of the things that we wanted to do is provide this professional development training on the art of storytelling. And so kind of through that process, a lot of the women there tell their stories. And, we found that it's just incredibly inspiring. It's a great way to connect within our own GE community, help each other get to know each other, but it's also, there's so much we can learn from our customers. And every time we've done these, we've trained over 500 women from 4 different continents over the last 2.5 years. And what I found is it doesn't matter if I'm in Istanbul or Singapore, some of the places we've been doing this, the stories are all the same. Everybody wants the same things. They want to have, they want to have a great life, and they want to have a lot of opportunities. And so it's just been a really inspiring thing to be a part of.
And inspiring to hear about, too.
Yeah.
Your turn
I'll
now.
chime in. So my passion area for me in the last few years has been women's health. And, I think of that in a holistic way in terms of, our physical health, but also our emotional health. And I can build on that as a female leader and at a big company. I think the modeling that we do for others is really important, and that includes, showing that you can have life outside of work. Also, I had breast cancer a few years ago, totally out of the blue, very unexpected. It was early stage, fortunately, but having gone through that process, I learned a lot about myself and just the importance of being proactive. I was able to catch it really early because I was on top of my health, and I went in for routine checks, and I was also, I was physically fairly fit, and so, you never know when something like that's going to happen, and I just learned a lot about, I feel ready to tackle this, partially because I feel, grounded in who I am, and I feel like my body can go through this, so it's something that I've seen a lot of people respond really well to, so it's something I've started focusing more of my time on.
And it's pretty amazing that you're telling all these people here. That's pretty ballsy. Thank you. I kind of think that when I talked to the three of you, we were prepping and it was so fun. I could have just done it for hours. We had a lot of conversations, lots of excuses to have conversations. You're women of action, and we're all here together. There's been a lot of discussion in the world right now about issues that we have, and I think we're kind of at this stage now where we can take action. It's up to us to do that. But that's hard. Obviously it's so hard, it's so challenging. I mean, here we are, CES. Technology can allow us to do amazing things, but it can also help us change people's lives. We actually did a research study. This is a bit of a shameless plug, so I'll own that, called Think Future Ready. And one of the things that we found out in the business world is that people have such a hard time sacrificing short-term responsibilities and expectations to have a long-term gain. And what we're always saying is, for our clients, is that you can't just react to change, you have to incite it. And you have to take action. And change is I guess you have to view it more like a catalyst, not an obstacle. You guys are really doing that every day. And I find that so fascinating. It's brave. Like we were saying before at lunch, can you tell that story? Because it was just a new one about how people were taking responsibility, or not.
I'm trying to remember what story, but I'll just speak on the topic because I'm passionate about it. Look, I think the biggest opportunity that we have is just the opportunity. I think one of the biggest risks is that if we don't create change, it will happen to us. I mean, I think right now we live in an age of disruption. We're seeing every industry, every function, every institution being disrupted, and it's really hard to see around corners. And one of the things that we found is that you just have to really, to get people on board. I go back to stories again. Stories are such a great way. If you can't sell it if you can't tell it, and so that's been one motivation. But I think the biggest risk that we have is just inaction.
And in a big company,
yeah,
it's safer to be.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's what we were talking about at lunch. Sorry, you had
I'll prompt you, it's okay.
jolt my memory. Yeah, no, I was telling Jamie at lunch that it's so. I think in a big company, it's so easy to just to do nothing. And it's the safe place is just to take no action at all, and so that's a lot of what you see, and that's a lot of what I struggle with in my current job, right? Because we've got 25,000 sellers in 180 countries, and we're fundamentally asking them to do their jobs differently and use a lot more technology, and so it's easier to just say I'm not going to do anything than to try something new.
It's very brave too, and I don't think, and not from a corporate perspective, but your story, but Kirsten, because Microsoft's gone through such a massive cultural change. So we're not going to go through, although I highly recommend Satya's book, which is an amazing book, Hit Refresh, really inspiring. People are sick of me talking about it, but it is really great. But you guys have gone, in your team, have gone through a very big shift about short-term buyers versus long-term fans, and taking action to shift that, but within the Microsoft culture. Can you kind of explain a little bit about that journey that you guys have been on?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so first the theme when Jamie talked to me about this panel and then this study they did and this just concept of change as a catalyst and inciting change really resonated with me. I think, as a female in digital marketing and in tech, it's like the world is happening. And, if you are not thinking ahead and thinking about where you need to be, you can't stand still. And so when I think about, when people on my team might say, what's keeping you up at night? Honestly, I'm like, are we driving the right change? Are we, am I foreseeing where we need to be? So that's kind of in my day job, something I think a lot about. But I've been fortunate to drive an initiative at Microsoft about the concept of earning fans. And thinking about our customer relationships, not just as a customer, but as a fan. And so this is something that I'm working on behalf of our CMO to drive across the company. And it's been incredibly rewarding. But I mean, fundamentally, it really is about thinking long term versus short term. How do you not just think about your next sale and your short term revenue? And it's not just thinking about like long term value. It's really thinking of, for us, we define a brand or a fan as someone who uses your products regularly, actually loves your product and feels an emotional connection, and is willing to advocate for you. So it's kind of a higher order, goal for us. And so we've had a lot of really good discussions internally. What does that mean for how we build products? What does that mean for how we market? What does that mean for how we listen? And so it's been very rewarding just to, see that resonate and see the hope that inspires in a company that is kind of historically known for being a little more of a rational marketer and kind of a functional company.
And not listening necessarily. I mean, but you guys have made a huge effort
No, the
and invested
culture
in
has,
listening.
yes, absolutely. The
Which
culture
I think is
has,
interesting in our society right now. We're not talking politics, but the ability to listen and hear either your friends, your colleagues, anybody with a different opinion or something that you may not like, because you guys have a whole listening campaign that's really transformed what you're doing with your fans.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think to briefly touch on Satya's book, one of the big themes that Satya has had, our CEO, is about becoming a learning culture. And so, the old culture was, know-it-all. You walked in the room, you're the smartest in the room, you don't question anyone, you don't get questioned, and he's really helped transform the culture to be, we need to be listening, we need to be learning, we need to be curious, we need to seek multiple points of view. And so some of that is internal cultural, and some of that is building in systems to do that, across hundreds of millions of consumers. So we've built that for a lot of our products as well.
It's pretty fascinating. So, Nola, we were talking about this because this is this whole idea. So Kirsten's going through short-term, long-term. Kate's going through this massive transformation. How many people here are on Twitter? Come on. All right. This is good. See? It's good. And she's, what are you, you're
At Nola Beth.
at Nola Beth at Twitter. So I'm let me come up with the appropriate phrase. I love Twitter. A little too much. I was going to say something off color, so I won't do that. But when I got to meet Nola, the first thing I was saying was, oh my God, I love Twitter. I talk about a company that is right in the spotlight, listening, having a lot of changes. I mean, without it being a corporate, mantra, but like, what are you guys doing to know the idea is you know more about people, and the more you know about people, the better experience they can have. How are you guys translating that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I say, just personally in my career, this is the most exhilarating, exciting, but also exhausting role. Like, we all move so fast. I quite literally operate at the velocity of my timeline constantly. When you talk about as a company and listening, Twitter is the largest collection of human thought, so much so that the Library of Congress keeps it as a record of history. And brands are leveraging that as a massive focus group. So leaders at each of your companies, at Microsoft, GE, are totally leaned in and attuned to what their customers are thinking, seeing, doing, reacting to in real time. And there's unprecedented access to that immediate feedback cycle that can shift campaigns, product launches, packaging, the relationship, who's running the relationship in real time. And whether you're using listening tools or you just have leaders who understand the importance of being accessible, transparent, and open, that data can really shift your business and ensure that you are future ready.
But it's a little scary, right, for leaders? I mean, to get used to being transparent and open. That's not really how leaders have been trained, especially right now. We're going through a massive transition. What kind of advice do you give people when they're trying to embark on being, you said this earlier, it's a big passion point for you.
So typically when I work with CEOs, CMOs, boards, there's a hesitation, right? Obviously there are compliance and legal and comms issues at play, and everyone, especially when you're working for a public company, you don't want to have a gaffe or that moment that you immediately regret. And so I always tell people, if you wouldn't say it publicly or you wouldn't say it to a reporter, don't tweet it. Like, I guess that's probably rule one. But also that it's a crawl, walk, run. If you're just stepping in, you're getting used to a new platform or arena, you don't have to go all in immediately. You can listen. Just listen. Follow people, observe, search for your own brand, and then maybe retweet. Retweeting is also, I think, a pretty easy tool that shows what you stand for, what you believe in. quote tweet, you can give context to what you're sharing. It's a reflection of you. And then when you're a little more comfortable, you can start sharing original
Or
content.
oversharing
Or oversharing. Yeah.
in the middle
That's
of the
good
night.
too.
It's good. I love it. So, how many people here in this room, I just want to get a show of hands, and we won't, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, feel like they're trying to make changes in their own business, their company, their lives. They're really trying to do things different. It's the new year. How many people, right? It's this time of year. If you don't say that, it's kind of like, really? I'm so impressed that you're not trying to change. However, it's hard. It's so hard. It's scary, a lot of obstacles. Can you guys give some advice? Like, you've done this. How do you help people take, just to start, to get that first step going? Whoever wants to answer first.
I'll take a shot, Jamie. I mean, I think one of the things that we can do as leaders is we have to really make it safe for our teams to fail. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that we can do, and that's a radical culture change. I mean, I think especially at GE, we've got a lot of type A people that feel like they have to be perfect, myself included, and it's a genetic defect, and so how do you make it comfortable for type A people to fail? And one of the things I learned recently, I was reading, and the CEO of Spanx, one of the things that she said was that the reason why she was able to create her what's now a $4 billion company is because every night at dinner, she would come home to her mom and dad, and they would say, hey, what did you fail at today? And over time, that made her really comfortable with failure. So when she had this crazy idea, for this new product, she went for it because she really genuinely wasn't afraid to fail. And so we're trying to do the same thing, is make it comfortable for people to fail. And I think you do that in culture through sharing stories. That's really how your culture is passed down.
But it's so scary to fail. How many people here are terrified of failure? Right? It's like, I am. It's a scary thing. So how do you get somebody to actually be comfortable with failure? I mean, how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll give one more just quick story on that. So Beth Comstock, our one of our leaders, she probably did the best job, I think, and gave us a great gift in the company, which, and I'll give a quick example. There was a new employee that she had on board, and he said, hey, I want you to give me $1 million to go do this thing on health imagination for our healthcare business. And in a normal world, she would have said, yes, absolutely, here's the $1 million. But she didn't. She said, we're trying to think, act, and work more like a startup. So I'm only going to give you, $100,000, and I want you to go do a test and prove to me that you can make this idea work before I give you the $1 million. So he goes and he does the test, and sure enough, it doesn't work. And what Beth did that really changed the culture at GE, or really started the tidal wave of it, is she went out and publicly celebrated the fact that we failed. We wasted $100,000. We tried something and it didn't work, but the great news is we didn't spend $1 million. And so it's kind of this really interesting, paradigm shift. And that's a way to celebrate failure. And that's a way to create learning in the company that, hey, it's better to start small, test, fail, and learn than to just go out and spend $1 million right from the beginning, which is what we would have done.
And a lot of companies, I think, feel it's like in the Hollywood world, nobody ever gets fired for buying a TV ad. That's sort of it's like no one ever gets fired for doing that. So, okay, fine. And in the tech world, or if you're the digital person in your company, investing in a huge tech stack is always seen as okay, that's check that box, that's really good, and it doesn't always work. And in fact, it's kind of scary because our research showed, which was really scary. Where's Seth Solomons, our North American CEO? There he is. We had this debate about whether or not we were going to publicize this because we had all of these people tell us that, yep, they've invested all this money, millions of dollars in these technology resources, and yet 74% of them still are not seeing results. So that's not celebrating failure, that's hiding failure. And that, I wonder how much that goes on because it's just safer to do that, and that's not, you're not making progress that way. Right. So it's a real conundrum.
I can chime in with the thought there because I think just building on that, I think some of that is cultural for sure, which is how do you give people a safety net and enable them to have the right level of risk either for themselves or for their line of business, and so that they feel empowered and safe to do that. But I think some of it is how do you set up kind of the processes? So something that I've always tried to do with my team is to say, I want you to be able to achieve your goals with 90% of your budget. Like, structure your plan, structure, what you need to do, and save 10% for innovation and for testing. And because you're kind of then orchestrating, and it's been a really helpful best practice. I think partially just because you have some money kicking around, but honestly, in a bigger way, it's just that they feel like that's part of my job, actually. Like, I have to go innovate and try new things. And some people do it more than others, but it's been a really helpful tool.
Okay, so 10% of my oh no, I won't. My boss is in the room. I'm not going to talk about that.
The WPP team's going to be like,
They're gonna
great.
Wait, what? What are you talking about? So it's interesting too, because, and I'll go back to my fandom for Twitter. Thank you very much. But interesting, you guys are using a lot of AI, but it's not as public about what you're doing and investing for these changes. And there's a lot of discussion about what are you doing, when are you doing it. But you did tell me something that you could talk about, which was getting to know some of your power users.
Well, I think just generally listening. It comes back to listening. And obviously tech platforms be able to experiment, and then you see the results. And so recently we've rolled out a few changes like threads. People were organically doing tweet storms, right? You would see number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They were hard to follow, and only certain people were actually familiar with that convention. And so now rolling out threads makes it far more seamless to have a string of thoughts woven together, or increasing the limit to 280. Most people are still erring on the side of brevity, but now that's something that's also available. So again, it's listening, yes, but also having the customer first and foremost.
That was pretty risky. There was a lot of snarky behavior going on about 140 to 280. That was pretty good. So as we look forward, and I don't know if you guys have had a chance to really take in all the craziness here, but it's that time of year. What are you doing to be future ready in your own team, your own organization, your own life? It could be personal or professional. I'd love to hear what you guys are doing to kind of be ready for change and to be able to look at it as a catalyst. Go ahead.
I think personally, one of the things we were talking about, and one of the things I think Shelly, to her credit, and the female quotient team do really well, is expanding the circle. Talking to people you don't always see, opening the group, making the table bigger, inviting everyone in, because you're only as good as the people you expose yourself to. What are you listening to? What are you hearing? Who's this new person you've met that gave you a provocative thought and idea that shifted the way you do your job? I like talking to people who are a lot younger. What are you guys doing? What are you thinking? What are you seeing? It's easy to get stuck in this, like, I want to be at the table with all these CMOs or the most important journalists or these people who I see as at the top, but it's also important to look at the people who are on the rise and on the climb and understanding what they're seeing, thinking, doing, and focusing their time, attention, and energy on, because you can learn a lot.
That's such a great piece of advice, because I think especially when you have achieved a certain level of success, you feel compelled, like, we call it top to top, so we have to do that. But I actually, I find it so interesting, I agree, when you talk to a millennial or a Gen Z, and I know absolutely nothing, like, could be esports, it could be, I know, something else. You learn something that you had no idea. Yeah. And I think that goes back to, like, learn it all, not a know it all. And I love feeling dumb. Or uninformed about something and having that opportunity. I'm using that one. I like that. I never thought about it that way. That's really good.
I always say also, the weirder the invitation, the more likely I am to say yes, because you never know what kind of adventure you'll end up on.
Noted. Anybody here that wants her to come to something center like pickles and cookies night or something?
I think, to be future ready, I think I'm just really trying to have like an open heart, right, and an open mind. I think I'm reading a great book right now, The Untethered Soul. And it's one of the things that they talk about is like the more open you are, even when, we all have those people in our lives, that are, mean to us or, say mean things or do mean things. And, it's easy to let them kind of suck the energy out of you. But just this whole idea that you just are very open and you just let that kind of flow right through you, I think has been really empowering, because I think it's when you're open, you're willing to change, you're willing to learn, and I think that's one of the most important things we can do.
And to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, and to get uncomfortable. I think that's definitely like some of the best career advice I've ever gotten is, the more uncomfortable you can be when you take the next job, the next assignment, the next promotion, the better. If you're not scared to death about the new job that is on the horizon and your stomach isn't in a pit of knots, then it's probably not the right job for you to take, because it's when your stomach's in knots and you feel like you can't do it and you want to cry and go home to your mom. That's when you're in the right job, because that's when you're going to learn the most and grow the most.
Okay, that's a good one. I really like that one.
Yes, yes.
Untethered Soul. Okay,
Untethered soul. Yeah.
okay.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I got that one.
I'm learning a lot being on this panel. One piece of advice I got early in my career was a mentor asked me, what gives you oxygen? And it made me start thinking through, all of us have, taxes, if you will, in our jobs, things that we need to do we don't necessarily love. But this idea of identifying and understanding, where do I get my energy? And for me, being in this room and being at an event like CS is part of that. For me, it's looking out. So, it's easy, speaking of comfort, just to kind of like do the thing you're good at and focus on your day-to-day stuff. But how do you force yourself to say, hey, how am I going to go learn from the outside, get inspiration, and just, be willing to learn from others. I think it's big.
I've recently discovered Brene Brown. I'm sure everybody else is like, where you been? I don't know. A friend of mine told me about it. She had this great quote. It was I saw her speak, and she said, every human being feels marginalized or lonely or disrespected all the time. Every human being's walking around feeling like that to some degree or another. And if you look for confirmation of that in the world or with your friends, your family, or your colleagues, you will always find it. So just stop looking. And that was such a miraculous thing. It's kind of like just being comfortable with the way it goes. That's the only Brene Brown quote I ever have.